Hi, everyone. Thank you for being here today. We are the STEM team. We are a group of third year WPI students studying science and engineering. And today we are going to talk about how we implemented a STEM educational lab in Venice. My name is Mike.
I'm Kaylee.
I'm Josh.
And I'm Haley.
So, what is STEM? STEM is an acronym for Science, Technology, Engineering, and Mathematics, which can be translated to Scienza, Tecnologia, Ingegneria, and Matematica. And why is STEM important?
Thank you for asking, Kaylee. Currently, Italy needs lots of engineers. They have 244,000 right now, but they need 340,000 more. And this graph right now shows you how many available jobs there are in each of these industries. In mechanics, 62%, math, science, computer science, 59%. All of these. Italy needs STEM careers. And STEM projects can inspire students to pursue STEM careers. So a study we looked at project-wise involved giving an independent study project around STEM material to students. And this is their interest in some different STEM topics before and after. They had a much higher interest in pursuing a career in these fields. So we're going to talk a little bit about what inspired us to do STEM. So that's a photo of me, my freshman year in high school, doing the science fair. So I put a thermoelectric generator in a computer to take the heat from the computer and turn it back into electricity. And what would you know, I'm a WPI studying electrical and computer engineering now.
And then that's a picture of me in my 8th grade science class where my teacher inspired me to go in the STEM field by incorporating STEM activities into our everyday lessons. And I went from wanting to be a lawyer to wanting to be an engineer.
So, since introducing STEM at a young age is so important, we made the purpose of our project to create a STEM lab to expose Venetian children to STEM activities to inspire them to pursue a STEM career. And to do so, we designed 15 STEM activities using two innovative pieces of technology, the FarmBot and the SimTable. So first, we're going to look at the FarmBot, for which we created 6 STEM activities for.
So the FarmBot is a robotic farming machine that utilizes drag and drop coding through an online web app. You can do this through your computer or even your phone. And here we'll show you a quick clip of exactly what the FarmBot looks like and does. So as you can see, the FarmBot has a tool mount and automatically picks up seeds and plants them for you. All you have to do is select on the web app where you'd like them to be planted. It can also water your plants. You can set up a system of watering a certain amount of time, and as you can see, the plants will grow. The FarmBot can also detect weeds and de-weed and also sow the seeds. So as you can see, this is fully automated. You really don't have to do any manual labor yourself. You simply use the web app. So that's the FarmBot for you.
And then with the FarmBot, we implemented 3 educational aspects into our FarmBot activity menu. So first, looking at plant sciences, where we teach the kids about photosynthesis, plant growth, and water absorption. And then for programming, we teach the students about coordinate systems and drag and drop coding. And lastly, robotics, which we focus on problem solving and collaboration.
So now we're going to look at our second piece of equipment, which was the SimTable, and for that we created 9 STEM activities.
So the SimTable is an interactive 3D sand table, and on top of a projector stand, there's a Mac Mini which is controlling a projector and a camera, and those look at a sand table. And in that sand table is you have this stand you can morph into different shapes, and the camera can read the elevation of it. So using those two together, you can do a lot of cool things. So here's a little video we made of our SimTable. First, you can make a bunch of mounds and scan it, and it can read the topography of it. So the blue points represent the high, or red represents the highest, blue's the lowest. And you can simulate different effects. So right here we're simulating water. So as you can see, when you put water on the higher points, the camera can tell what's higher, and the water falls down to the bottom. You can also simulate fire. So here we're using placing fuel sources and anti-fuel sources. So here this is water. So we don't want water to burn there. And we're going to put in timber. So this is where the fire can burn. And if we start a fire, just around the edges, you can see it slowly spread. up to the tops of the hills. And then a second thing you can simulate is something called plumes. That's just another name for any sort of moving gas in the air. So here we're going to simulate some smoke. So you can place it down different sources on the map. And then the top left is a little hard to see, but you can adjust wind in any direction. So when we pull the wind to the right, all of the smoke blows to the right.
And then with the sim table, we also implemented 3 educational topics into our activities. The first being topography, where we teach students about elevation on a map. And then the second being flooding, where we teach students about the impacts of sea level rise and heavy rainfall. And then the last being fire behavior, where we teach students about how wind, fuel, and air density affect the movement of fire.
So now we're going to talk about our project outcomes. The first one was prepared and tested. The second one was developed STEM activities. And the third was observed and finalized our activities. First, we prepared and tested the STEM lab equipment, which was the FarmBot and the sim table. This was what the FarmBot and sim table looked like when we entered the lab. They were not assembled, and then this is what they look like now in the lab, just a few doors down the hall. Second, we developed beginner and intermediate STEM activities for elementary and middle school students using our lab equipment.
And before developing these activities, we thought it was very important to look at how previous STEM programs have been run. So first we looked at educational standards, both in Italy and the US. That's a photo of Massachusetts science, technology, and engineering framework. Then we looked at some STEM programs, some after-school ones. Our Bright Future is actually run in Worcester, and we volunteered at that last term. And we talked to STEM education experts who make STEM curriculum and work with STEM teachers. And with all of that together, we synthesized what we thought were the 6 best practices for carrying out STEM education. Having modern technologies, having personal connection, using the scientific method, active learning, cumulative learning, and project-based work.
So the first practice we want to go over is modern technologies. This practice is very important because technology is what will inspire the students and get them excited to actually go into the workforce of STEM. Here we have our FarmBot, which is a new and innovative technology, and our sim table, both found in the lab. And next we'd like to discuss personal connection, possibly one of the most important practices to implement into our activities. For the FarmBot here, you can see we try to make a connection between cellular respiration in plants and human respiration. And for the sim table, we can actually simulate flooding in Venice so that the students will connect flooding in Venice and those effects to their daily lives.
And then we move into the scientific method, which fosters critical thinking and high engagement. So first, this is an example of one of our lab worksheets for the FarmBot, where we utilize claim evidence reasoning in the form of students will form a hypothesis first, and then they will draw what they observed as evidence, and then they will give a reasoning of why they think that happened, and then make a claim of what they learned. And we also have these worksheets for some sim table activities, and they use the same claim evidence reasoning for those.
Another one that we decided was one of the best practices is active learning, as this requires hands-on learning for the students. So this would mean taking control of the FarmBot, as they can do it from their phone or a computer using the FarmBot web app. And for the sim table, they can actually mound their own landscape in the sand and then learn topography, as the projector can project on that landscape they created.
And then next, we focus on cumulative learning, where activities build upon each other, and then students use their skills gained from previous activities for the next activities. So this is kind of one of our structures for our FarmBot activities, where students learn about sunlight, water, oxygen, which is photosynthesis, and then they learn about how plants need space to survive, and then they move on to put the plants and plant with the FarmBot. And then we also have a similar setup for our sim table activities, where students can do an activity without the sim table first, simulating how water flows, and then move into topography, rainfall, and then complete a fire maze.
And finally, project-based learning, which is a very important thing in STEM fields. So to do the FarmBot project-based learning, they will take home a plant that they planted themselves as they fill out a journal on what they did to take care of it, which will resemble what the farming robot is doing in the lab as it takes care of their plants. And for the sim table, students will be put into teams with one of our activities where they engineer a bridge, and this requires them to work together to brainstorm and actually develop a product.
And then, so we created 15 activities at 2 different difficulty levels and organized them in our menu, which you can see there are FarmBot and SimTable activities, and then in both there are beginner and intermediate activities. So beginner and intermediate activities are targeted towards different age groups. Our beginner activities are geared for 5th and 6th graders, while our intermediate activities are geared for 7th and 8th graders.
So we're just going to show you guys an example from SimTable and from FarmBot, just to give an idea of how we do one of these activities. So first we're going to look at Fire Maze on SimTable. So the idea of this activity is to make a little maze on the SimTable and have fire flow through it and teach them about what fire needs to burn. So first, start out by covering the entire SimTable with something that's flammable, and then creating a path with water, which wouldn't burn. Again, these sorts of things, like what would burn, what wouldn't, we wouldn't tell the students. We'd have them figure that out. And if you start the fire at the beginning, so you can see the SimTable can tell what burns and what doesn't, and it'll follow the path indicated.
So now we're going to show you an example of a FarmBot activity. This activity we call tic-tac-toe. So tic-tac-toe is an activity. It's a game of X and O's, and it can either be played by 2 students or 2 groups of students. The students will take turns measuring the Cartesian coordinates of where they want to place their seed and execute this action on the FarmBot. So here students place a tomato plant, and now the alternate team or student will place their basil plant. They will alternate until there's a winner, in which there are 3 plants in a row. And in this case, as we see, they go back and forth, and basil wins the activity.
So now we're going to move into our third project outcome, where we observed student interaction with our technology and finalized our activities with STEM experts. We received STEM expert feedback from the expert at the Education Center at WPI.
And then we actually invited 3 students into the lab of 3 different ages, 5, 6, or 5, 8, and 10. And we observed how they responded to the equipment, and we noticed excitement and engagement, smiling and laughter, and unfortunately we did not observe any boredom in the lab. So what did we learn from the students and the teachers? Well, from the teachers, one thing that they noticed was they could see how to carry out the activities using our teacher guides, but they didn't know what they should expect to see during the experiment, so that's one thing we needed to add. Next, students like visuals, so they recommended we add visuals to the actual activity guides for the students. And finally, we needed to find a way to make sure that all the students are participating, sharing the tools like the laser pointer on the SimTable and controlling the robot for the FarmBot.
From the students, we learned that we won't be able to host an entire class around one piece of technology, so we need to create more pre-lab activities that can be completed off of the equipment. We realized that with a wide age gap, students didn't work very well together, so we think that we would need to host students that are the same age or grade. And activities need to be completed quickly in order to maintain the students' attention. They would begin to play in the sand on the SimTable if we took too long on one activity.
And some recommendations we had, since we ran out of time to do everything we wanted to do for future teams: test all the activities, all 15, with a full class of students. Working with a small group is not like, you need to have a full class so you can see who goes where, more logistics rather than attention. And then using that feedback to perfect the current activities, creating more activities that are off the equipment, and finally creating advanced activities for someone in high school.
And then so as we mentioned previously, we want to create more activities relating to the equipment but aren't actually performed on the equipment. And what's filled in here, as you can see, are the colored boxes represent the activities that are completed directly with the pieces of equipment, and then the grayed boxes are completed off of the equipment. And we only have a few activities that are completed without the equipment, so we want to include more of those activities. So this is what we mean. This would be our goal ideally. And then going off of that, we also want to create an advanced set, so then our menu would look the same for FarmBot, and then we would have beginner, intermediate, advanced completely with activities on and off the equipment. And then lastly, we want to show you our website where you can find our full STEM lab menu. Okay, so when you go to our Venice Project Center repository, you can go to our activity menu where you see our FarmBot and SimTable activities. And first is our FarmBot beginner activities. And so the first one, color changing flowers, is about water absorption in plants, and then dancing flowers represents how plants need sunlight. Breathing leaves is about respiration in plants, and then lastly, farm plot is about how students are going to plant their plants with the FarmBot. And an example of what one of these might look like when you click on it, you'll see a teacher activity guide, which is a guide on how to help the teacher carry out this activity. And then there are some student activity worksheets that we showed previously, so the student has something to follow along to. And then if you go back to our activity menu, under FarmBot, we also have intermediate activities, so tic-tac-toe, as Mike explained previously, and then we also have a robotics activity where students get to use the technology to directly interact and water plants. And then we also have SimTable activities. So for our beginner SimTable activities, as I mentioned previously in the slides, we have our water flows activity. Then we move into our topography activity, rainfall, fire maze. And again, for these, an example, we have the teacher activity guide and then the student activity worksheet. And lastly, for SimTable, our intermediate activities, we have our rainfall, Salute Bridge, Mose simulation, King of the Hill, and Let's Interact with Venice. And that's it. Thank you.